Why do you need someone to tell you how to live your life? Why do you trust their voice more than your own? What would happen if you stopped waiting for instructions? Do your heart and gut ever come into the equation? What about your own reasoning? And when was the last time that either of those had the final say in something you wanted to do? Welcome to Degloirespace, where we identify that glory is our birthplace and we choose to live our lives with absolute grace. What if I told you that the authority you're following is just an illusion that you're dancing around? It doesn't really exist, but you choose to uphold it because it makes you feel better about yourself. You feel like the responsibility is not really yours. What if I told you that when you want to do something, you will find a way to do it? But first, you will go out to look for justifications. You look for someone to okay it for you, directly or indirectly. That way, in case you fail, or if it doesn't look too good on your resume in front of others, you can say, hey, they said. Basically, you already know what you believe. But before you do what you want to do, you'll go out and shop for a quote, for a guru, for a post even, that validates your action. That way you can say, look, you are the authority of your own world. Why not own it from the start? You see, this is a part of social conditioning, social programming, if you may. And you see, depending on which society you belong to, they will tell you who the authority is and where you should seek this authority. In some places, they call the authority religion. And hey, even religion, though it's an authority, it has so many different interpretations, so many different opinions. So it's not clear cut. Then you have other places, they call it family or tribe. And we all know how divided families are on the inside. On the outside, they appear together, but on the inside? And then finally, you have places that call their authority politics. And we all know the strategy of politics: divide, conquer. And what do they all have in common? All these authorities? Well, you better abide by them, because if you don't, they might isolate you. They might punish you. They might even kill you, all for having a different opinion. From an early age, we learn that before you give your opinion, if you quote an authority, your opinion would be looked at in a more serious manner. So we develop that habit. This is what I think. Let me see if God said anything about this. Let me see if any scientist or philosopher or politician said anything about this. That way now nobody can argue with you. Once you start school, this is affirmed more. When you're writing an essay, even if you believe something, if you follow it with a quote, cite a quote, they can't really argue with you. Hey, that scientist, it's not on me, it's on that scientist. So we learn this habit. Now, it's not wrong when you're doing that with science, engineering, and all that, those domains. But when you start justifying your own life based on quotations, not on your belief, are you really working your intelligence? I remember when I was at school, I was really inspired when I first started reading Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis. I was so inspired. It sounds so majestic. It sounds so theatrical. It feels like almost like one of those old horror movies where, they're going through some murder scene. It makes you, you're 17. It kind of like fits into those domains. And at the time this movie had come out, it was called Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp. So, I was really into it. And our teacher told us to write an essay about any aspect we wanted of psychology. So I jumped onto that. And I remember when I handed my essay in, she wasn't very impressed. And her exact quote was this: do you know much about Sigmund Freud? At the time, I didn't. I just knew I had read a little bit of things here and there about him. And I said, yeah, little bits. She said, have you read, and she gave me a name of a book, I forgot. It's all about critiques of Sigmund Freud. And I said, I haven't. She said, oh, it's a critique about why he's outdated and it doesn't work anymore and he's sexist. And, she gave me a bunch of things. Me, I'm just a 17-year-old. She would have been like in her late 40s or something like that. I didn't know that me writing about this thing has offended her. Like, what's it got to do with me? And, she wasn't happy that I quoted an authority that she didn't consider an authority. She failed to see that I'm learning, I'm young, I'm exploring. And so my opinion, based on an authority that she didn't like, got punished. Is that fair? While we're on the topic of school, let's think about the classical school model. Basically, you have a teacher and a group of students. So authority is needed because the teacher needs to put order in the classroom. It's one person and so many students. You have to put some order. That's not the issue with authority. The issue is when it goes overboard, when you are told this is how you have to think. There's a difference between, hey, this is some information, read it, find out, and a different way when you say this is how to think. One of them is meddling with your own psychology. One of them is telling you, if you don't think like that, you're wrong. That's a big difference between, the Socratic method where we are discussing and you bring me to the ideas that are logical. So when the authority goes overboard, it's not about not needing authority. It's about that this authority now is getting internalized. And when you internalize it as a child and then you grow up, what's going to happen? You're going to learn that, to be relevant, I need to quote, I need to quote, I need to quote. And what does that transfer to? I need to get permission. I need to get permission. I need to justify everything I do. I need to be okayed by someone else. And then, even in your day-to-day actions, instead of you living, flowingly, you're always seeking to be, where is the authority that okays what I'm doing? If somebody holds you responsible, you're like, oh, but so and so said I can. And so these habits that are formed in the classroom, they leak into your adult life. And this is how we know if it's good authority or bad authority. Because it's not a blind answer like all authority is bad. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. But if the authority leaves you lost when it's absent, when the authority paralyzes your thinking and you always are dependent on it. Oh, do I walk into this room with my left foot or my right foot? Paralyzed over things that are to do with your living. That paralysis on your living, that's detrimental to your health. And then further, we have more problems. What if you meet someone? So for example, you grow up in a culture where this person is an authority. Then you go to another culture where that person is not really an authority. Suddenly you've got problems now. They're not taking your authority serious. You don't take their authority serious. You get defensive, offensive, and sometimes we see in the world violence erupts because of this. I won't mention any examples of this. I don't want to turn this into a political chat. You know what I mean. Can we live our lives without such authority? Am I saying you should have no authority above you? Am I saying to be anti-authoritarian? No, that's not what I'm aiming at all. I'm not against structure. I'm against slavery. When failing to listen to an authority or hearing a word from them makes you feel lost, it makes a victim out of you. Why? Because it turns you into an unintelligent person. And it makes you a captive. You're a captive to that authority, that ideology. And once you become a captive, let me tell you, it is not possible for you to do any internal work. None. Some people sell their religions and their ideology and culture with the idea that our system is a complete system. It's plug and play. We will tell you how to do everything from how to sleep, how to marry, how to meet people, how to do every little thing, every detail in your life. It's a complete system. How to greet people, which hand to use to itch your nose, how to love people. And when they sell it like it's a peace of mind. But what you're buying is obedience dressed as guidance. It makes the world easier. It makes your life easier. You don't need to think for yourself. It's all cut out nicely for you. How convenient. While to some people that may sound attractive, the system's cut out for you. All you need to do is just join in. It comes at a cost. What's the cost? Your mindset, your development, your liveliness. You think you're going to follow a system and then suddenly you have life all figured out just because you followed that system. So yesterday I wasn't part of this system. Today I joined in. Now suddenly that I've joined in, I'm suddenly part of the crew that knows it all. So suddenly you don't need to do any work on yourself. You just hand over, hey, system, authority, whoever you are, you live my life for me. I'm just there. The moment you hand over your responsibility to a system, you've literally handed yourself internally. And when you hand yourself over internally, all that happens is you become blind. You become like those zombies walking, The Walking Dead or Night of the Living Dead. You become just one of those. You're not alive anymore. It's like your spirit has just been switched off. You can turn it back on eventually, but it becomes harder. The longer that switch hasn't been touched, the harder it is to wake up. And you got to be careful because systems can be dumb. What I mean is blind. They don't differentiate between people. They say, oh, we're being fair. So one rule has to apply to all. When I was a teacher, there were times where, there's a rule and there's a student. They might have talked in class. My question, the system says don't talk in class. If you talk, these are the rules. But now let's be intelligent. Imagine that's a student who's talking all the time in class versus a student who never talks in class. Do you treat him the same way? Is that what fairness is? Imagine there's two people who keep repeated, what do they call those? Repeated offenders. Are they the same as well? How do you know the motivation of that one and the motivation of that one? What if this one is motivated to be rude and this one is motivated because they feel low self-esteem? And then you're punishing them blindly. How fair is that? And who deciphers who gets what? If there's no intelligence involved, you will be oppressing someone. Someone will feel that they are unjustly treated. Some systems want to create dumb people, and they make sure that your intelligence never is allowed to get harnessed. Why? It's easy to control you. When someone doesn't fit that mold, imagine you're someone who asks questions in a society that does not allow you to ask questions. That person will get beaten into conformity. And in the past, we've seen examples of people like that getting killed and murdered just for having a different thought. Imagine you haven't done anything, but because you think differently, they kill you for that. And even till now, you will see examples of things like that in the world. Genocides that are happening, violence that is caused by just people having different opinions. This guy's authority says this guy's authority is rubbish. This guy's authority says this guy's authority is rubbish. And we have an issue. And it doesn't matter whether these ones are more conservative and these ones are less conservative. Either one who operates without intelligence, not the right way. Intelligence is needed on both sides. And we need to work on harnessing the human's intelligence, our instinct to think, to be, to explore. This is the innermost, valuable thing in the human being, to be able to explore, to be able to think for themselves. And whether you come from a society that thinks like that or like that, doesn't really matter. As the real importance for a person developing their mindset is to harness their intelligence. Well, when do we use authority and how? One such place is when we have objective world rules. You are not allowed to harm anybody else. That makes sense to everyone because all of us agree that our survival is important to organize things that we are commonly involved in. For example, economy, finances, the share market, driving rules. We can't have, not each one of us can have their own. If you do that, it becomes an inefficient way. So structures and authorities can be used to make efficiency. We know that no system can ever be complete. None. Why? Because there's always updates required. There are always changes taking place, and the world changes, life changes, technologies change, people involved are changed. These people die, these people are born new. There's always new updates, and for that reason, authorities also need constant update. So a good system will allow itself to update. And how does it get updated? Intelligence. There are people who need to think freely, because when they think freely, they can get in touch to things inside the human being. And if you get in touch inside things that are inside you, you actually get inside, you're actually getting in touch inside with other people. There's a reason why we resonate with things that come out. Steve Jobs' Apple vision, when he invented the iPhone, how did he know it's going to take off? Something impressed him, and it's going to impress the rest of us, because human beings, we have a big commonality. These people who think freely, they are the ones that carry us all. They are the ones that drive change in the world. Remember, the aim of freedom is not to go rampant in crime, because some people, they think freedom, if you let people do what they want, they'll destroy the earth. When we say left to your own device, if you're left to your own device, it's a negative thing. You're left to your own device, you're going to do something that's not right, which of course is utterly false. Freedom does not equal crime. Freedom is not chaos. It is the ability to choose and own your choice. I've seen this happen many times in classrooms. You have a tyrant teacher who grips everybody hard. And no, that teacher, when they're absent or they're late, usually their classroom is the one that goes into chaos. The kids are like, "Hey, there's no one here," and then they go on a, the destruction and noisy, and this is the classroom that happens in. Whereas a teacher that instills in the students order, hey, when I'm not here, just do 1, 2, 3. I might be a bit late. You'll find that kind of classroom usually better regulated, even with the absence of that teacher. The tyrant teacher versus the teacher that's trying to instill intelligence, they're both in authority. But the difference, both authorities are trying to organize, but one of them is based on blind obedience, and one of them is based on nurturing intelligence. And an important word here is blind obedience. Blind obedience can occur through two ways. One, through force. I will come out there, anyone who goes against me will get punished, obliterated. Or the other way that blind obedience can happen is reluctance to want to think for yourself. So I don't want to think for myself, so I give blind obedience. Force is quite easily understood. You basically get beaten or terrorized into a particular way. Reluctance, that's on you. What we're trying to criticize here in this video is an authority that's trying to take over your intelligence, not allowing your intelligence to flourish. And worse than an external authority is when that authority gets taken in by you, and then you become the enforcer of your own cage. And what is your experience with authority? Do you, for example, remember being a student and there's a teacher with blind authority and one with more positive authority? Was there a difference on how it affected you? Please share below. I'd love to hear your experience. And if the message of this video resonated with you, please leave a like and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.